Hello and welcome again to the Hill Duvernay Associates live webcast. So glad to have all of you join us again. And as always, it's a privilege and an honor to sit here with managing partner. Let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Candace Lynn Hill Duvernay, the managing partner of Hill Duvernay Associates. So glad you were able to watch or tune in live for those of you tuning in live.
Yeah. And my name is Nicole Carter. And again, I always get to have the chance to kind of host and MC these and ask questions that I've always wanted to know about, and then a lot that have been submitted from our audience as well.
Exactly.
So we're going to just jump right into this tonight.
Okay.
And the first question is kind of a broad one, but it's why talk about child support? Because we're going to talk about child support specifically.
The whole time, okay? But honestly, Nicole, it's what we call the big green elephant in the room. I said green because money, ha ha ha, clever me. But it's the big elephant in the room. Parents who co-parent oftentimes don't want to talk about child support. Sometimes you have a mom or dad who is taking care of a child who needs some support from the other spouse or former parent, and not former parent, but former partner. And they don't know how to broach the subject because they feel like if I ask him or her for child support, they may think I'm saying they're not a good dad or a good mom. So you have that in the area, a parent who needs help, a parent who may be contributing time, but not necessarily contributing funds or not contributing enough funds consistently. So it's that thing that people rarely want to talk about, but it's that hot button topic that gets a lot of people in my office upset, frantic, because when something needs to get paid, or when lights are about to get cut off, or when little Johnny needs a new pair of shoes, they've not discussed this ever. I mean, I have people who come to me, their children are 5 years old, 10 years old, sometimes even 15 years old, and the parent has just been paying here and there. And when I ask them, well, have they ever tried? Well, we never discussed it. So I think it's one of those taboo topics that really I see a lot, that I wanted to kind of share some information with you all so that you can know what's going on with child support in Georgia.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that's a taboo topic. I think that even crosses from just child support to other areas. No one really wants to talk money ever. So that makes a lot of sense.
Nobody wants to talk money ever. And I think specifically with child support, though, because it means you don't think I'm being a good dad, I buy him shoes. Or you don't think I'm being a good mom, I pick him up. You know, so a lot of parents take that personally when the child support comes into play. Or you have people who have been paying so much for so long, and they realize, well, I've been paying X amount of dollars that covers child care, and my baby had asthma and all this stuff. Now he's 16, no child care, no extracurricular activities. His asthma's gone, praise God, but I'm still paying the same amount of money that I was paying when he or she was first born. And you have those parents like, if I want a modification or I want to change the amount, they may think I'm a bad dad. So it's really a taboo topic where if you really get down to the brass tacks we're going to talk about today, Georgia law is quite clear about what child support is and what it will be. So I think if people had these amounts in place, they'll feel a lot more comfortable about their co-parenting situation.
Okay. So I'm going to save this. I have two questions. I'm going to save one and put it in order. You talked about modifications, so we're going to get to that.
Yes.
But before we talk about modifications, the first part is really, so for example, we'll say fathers, you know, how does child support work if there's been no legitimation?
Okay, no legitimation. Okay.
Legitimation.
Okay.
I was trying to use the phrase I saw on there. Okay, so for those of us who aren't legal terms.
Right.
So if it has not been determined he's the daddy.
Yes. I love it. Well, let me break down the term legitimation for you, because that's a whole different ball of wax. In Georgia, when a child is born out of wedlock, the father does not have any rights. A lot of dads don't realize that. They think I was there holding her hand. I was there throughout the pregnancy. I love my baby mama. I love her. I was there with her. And in Georgia, thank you for being there for her, but you have no legal rights to the child. Now, we'll discuss custody and visitation, all that at a later webcast when we're joined by my of counsel. But that's what legitimation is. You are telling the courts, I want to have legal parental rights to my child. Okay, so it's not necessarily paternity like what you alluded to. Okay. It's either right daddy. Paternity is a part of legitimation, but that's not the next step is establishing those father's rights. Okay. So in Georgia, however, if there's no legitimation, if there are no paternity rights established for the father, but a mama comes in or a mother goes in and says, hey, I want to put this parent on child support because he's my son's dad or he's my daughter's dad, they will say, okay, let's do it. they'll start the action. But you don't have to bring any kind of proof that he's the father at all.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the father
That's a huge difference.
It's huge.
So
then the father
wow.
will come in and say, that baby don't look like me. No.
You say no, but you know that's
what they say.
Yeah.
But he might come in and contest paternity. Now at that point, paternity will become an issue, and the courts will say, okay, we'll give you a paternity test to establish if you're the father. Okay, you're the father, now what next? You still don't have any rights, but you will be required to pay child support. Okay?
Wow.
Or let's use the mother, for example, because a lot of times we hear child support and we think of dads paying.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of situations, you have fathers who are taking care of the children. You have non-custodial non-parents at all, non-parent custodians, whether it's a grandparent, an aunt, or uncle. And the mother or father is out there somewhere. They're just not taking care of the children.
Mm-hmm.
Those parents can get child support as well.
Okay.
So a grandparent, grandma who's taking care of her son's child for the son or the mom, she can get child support as well. Okay. So if it's to be instated by one of those people, a grandma or a father who's taking care of his child full time will come to our office or child support services. You could go to child support services and get it done. And they would say, hey, I have this child I've been taking care of full time. I have the rights to be taking care of the child. That's the sticky thing with grandparents, because sometimes the grandparent has just been a grandparent and taking the child. There's been no guardianship put in place or no adoption taking place.
Right.
That's a little different. I'm talking about a person with legal rights to take care of the child. Okay. If they come to child support services or to my office with legal rights to take care of the child, then we can seek those benefits from the non-custodial parent.
Okay.
And let's talk about real quick, I didn't mention this before, but the difference between child support services getting involved or you go through a private attorney. People often say, well, Ms. Duvernay, I ain't gonna go to you, I'm gonna go to child support services. That's fine and well. There are two ways to start a child support action. You can either go through the Department of Child Support Services or DFACS, Department of Family and Children Services. They could do it for you. And what they will do is they will take care of the paternity testing a lot of times. They will do the whole paperwork for you. They're not your lawyer though. They're just acting on behalf of the child. Okay, so they're gonna call you and say, Nicole, we need this money for this person. What are you making? What's your income? And they may ask your husband or ex-husband. We have to speak that over your life. Well, what's your income? And they'll do all the work for you. The problem with child support services, and nothing against child support services at all, is they often don't go the extra step to make sure that the parents who are giving that information are giving true and accurate information. So you and I both own our own businesses. You're with Creative Flame Media. Shout out to them. I'm with Hill Duvernay Associates. As a self-owner, a self-employed person, we can literally make our income whatever it is. We're not doing that, Uncle Sam, but we could, okay? And so child support services may say, well, she only makes this amount of money. A lawyer will say, no, let's get in and get going. Okay, so that's the child support services. Whatever you tell them the numbers are, they get it done. It's a lot cheaper to go through child support services, usually maybe $50, $25, I'm not sure. But you may not be dealing with somebody who's using the truth and all that stuff. Okay? That's the one way to do it.
That's interesting. The
other way to do it is to do an actual action, like you would do a divorce action or any other kind of lawsuit. You will file a suit for child support. Okay, so you will come to my office or any attorney's office and ask them to file a child support case for you. It's the same process. We serve the father or mother if you're the father seeking child support, and we go from there. Like I said, the big difference is we're able to kind of handhold and say, okay, you need to give me your bank statements. This doesn't sound right. I want to subpoena records from your employer. I want to do this. I want to do that. You can negotiate more as well. Child support services are going to say the number is what the number is, and that's that.
Okay.
And can we talk about the number real quick?
Definitely.
Because I know when people say the number, all this stuff I'm thinking about, we talk before these things about what to talk about and things like that. But as I'm talking, some things have come up. And one of the biggest things is how did they come up with that number?
Right.
Back in the day, it used to be a percentage of your income and a percentage of this income will constitute child support. Well, they got away with that in 2006, and they put what's called a child support calculator. And that's pretty much the state of Georgia legislatures every year determine what amount is sufficient to raise a child.
Okay.
And then what they do is there's this big Excel worksheet that you put in numbers with income and different possible deductions, and then you populate the child support number. Okay. So it's not as simple as, oh, he's with me 80% of the time, I'm only going to pay 20% of my income. It doesn't work like that.
Gotcha.
Okay, so it's a very complicated worksheet that is, if you don't know how to do it, get somebody to help you do it or hire somebody, because the worksheet can be done wrong, and a lot of times it is done wrong. But that's how the number is populated.
Okay, that's good to know. That was a lot.
It was.
I was like, we have a part 2.
Exactly.
Just on some of those other things. So let's then talk. Let's now talk about the modification piece.
Okay.
And why do you say that? I heard like 2 beeps, so I could see if we had emails coming in.
Okay.
But how or can child support be modified?
Okay. Okay, well, while you're checking that, I'll talk to you all. Child support can be modified in several ways in Georgia. So the first thing is you get the child support amount put in place, like we discussed, and we go from there, okay? So you put the child support amount in place, and 2 years goes by, and you say, you know what, I think I want to modify this amount. You can do it then. You would do the same process. You would either go to child support services, or you would go to a lawyer's office. A lot of times child support services is iffy about whether or not they will do the modifications, but you go to your attorney's office and they will handle the modification if it's been 2 years. And what we do is we review the numbers and see, okay, has your income changed? Have the child's needs changed? If not, the amount will say the same. If it has, the amount will change. Okay. The other thing is, and I've had this happen before, somebody got on child support and then literally the next month got a job. It wasn't working. Then the next month got a job at this great corporation making 6 figures, all these benefits, and the mom is sitting there like, well, the courts have really anticipated that. The legislator has really anticipated that, and they've done what's called the substantial change. So there has been a substantial change in your needs, or not your needs, your income, or the income of the minor child. You can get a modification sooner than that 2-year period. So, for example, like the job situation, that's a huge substantial change. You go from making nothing to making 6 figures a year. So that would directly affect the child's ability to receive more income or more money from the parent. Okay. Another way would be you lose your job. So you go from making 6 figures to making nothing. And now you have this larger amount of child support, and you're like, I cannot make this. I cannot pay it. And so the courts say, well, things happen. Let's look at that. Let's try to modify those numbers, and let's see what we're looking at for income state. Okay. Now, another way is if the child's needs change. So let's say you have a minor child who was in, like I said, the asthma situation earlier. Or let's say we have a child who's in ballet, soccer, and tap throughout middle school. They get to high school, they're a cool kid. They're not doing any of that. Or they go from extracurricular club sports, where you have to pay all this money, to team sports, where you still have to pay for the shoes and the uniforms. You're not paying a lot of out-of-pocket costs. So those needs have changed. Daycare is a big one. You have children that are going to daycare. Some daycares are $500 a month. Some are much more than that. Private school. You're in private school and your tuition is $1,000 a month. And then you go to a public school because that's where you want to be. Your dad or mom is still paying your other parent child support that anticipates you going to this very expensive school. So any substantial change in the needs of the child or the income of the parents can trigger a need for a modification sooner than that 2-year period. And I tell everybody, if something happens, don't just hide your head in the sand. With family law, a lot of people are like ostriches, like, oh my God, I lost my job. I have to pay $1,000 child support, but oh God. And you just see the amount racking up. And the child support services, if we modify it and get you a lower amount, that amount you owe does not go down.
It's not retroactive.
No. So you lost your job in January, but you didn't come get a modification in August. You're on the hook for those January through August arrears, okay? So as soon as you have a true substantial change in your circumstances, it's very important that you consider seeking an attorney to assist you with getting a modification done.
That's actually really important, because it's almost a good practice to look at your situation and make sure nothing has changed.
Exactly.
On a regular basis.
Exactly.
Just to keep it fresh, because like you said, even like the extracurricular activities are going to private school.
Exactly.
I mean, it's likely that that's going to happen at least once or twice.
Exactly.
So,
and child support is meant to anticipate or it's meant to be long term. And so you try to kind of, we do with a lot of our people who come with modifications, we try to anticipate some of those changes so you're not coming back every 5 years or every 3 years. So if you know your child is going to be active or you want to kind of buffer that in, we want to include that. Or if you know that you're military, you're retired, that's not changing, we want to make sure you get a credit for that insurance and those kind of things.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that we anticipate any substantial changes down the line, which is why it's important to get child support done properly the right way. And like I mentioned earlier, the difference between child support services and a private attorney will go the extra mile and say, okay, you didn't bring me anything regarding insurance. Are you paying insurance for the minor child? Or you didn't bring me anything regarding extracurriculars. I know you mentioned that little Timmy's in baseball and that you take care of those fees. That's the kind of step that your lawyer will take that child support services will likely not take. Okay? So that's something to consider.
Okay. So staying along the lines of money, but this whole conversation really is about money. But what about taxes? How are you able to claim taxes if you or claim your children as dependents or so on and so forth if you are the one that's paying child support?
Now, we get this question all the time. We actually answered it, I think, as a holiday gift, but if you didn't check that one out. Mm-hmm. But we had a webcast where that question came up too. Mm-hmm. But to answer it again for you all out there, the answer is no. If you are not the custodial parent, I don't care if you're paying $5,000 a month in child support, you cannot claim that child for your taxes for income tax purposes. Mm-hmm. Now there are some situations where parents are paying child support even though they have the child most of the time. It's a very rare occurrence, but in that situation, if you are the primary custodian and you are paying child support to the other custodian because your income is so great that the other parent has to have some kind of support to make sure the child's lifestyle is not interrupted, then you, even though you're paying child support, could qualify for an income tax credit because that child is your dependent. Okay. Just because you're paying for a child that's not living with you regularly, it does not, you cannot get that credit. One way around that is if the parent agrees to sign that over to you, but then you have to make sure that whatever credit they give, they cut you a check. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it happens. Sometimes mm-hmm. you have a co-parenting situation where people are very cordial, very friendly, and they make that agreement and they stick by it. Most of the time, you have people like, no, somebody make me, and nobody can.
No, can't. Okay.
So yeah.
And I remember we talked about that, but it made sense to.
It did. You got to include it on this one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So then let's go back and look at the courts. So we talked about the spreadsheet, but when the courts are determining child support, what all are they kind of looking at? What's the biggest thing or the biggest areas, that weigh the heaviest for them?
Well, it really honestly can vary, but let me put it like this. We're looking at the needs of a child. Often people come to me and say, man, Ms. Duvernay, I have a light bill, I have a mortgage, I have a car note, I have this, I have that. I cannot afford to pay this child support. The reality is most judges are going to say, oh, well, okay. So what they look at is they're going to look at the income of both parents. They're going to look at the needs of the child. So if the child has daycare, if the child has extreme medical, we're not talking about an asthma pump here or there, but if you're talking about regular monthly visits to a psychiatrist, or if he has a speech therapist or she has a some kind of medical condition that they have to do every month, they take that into consideration. They take into consideration if the children, if the parents are paying healthcare. So if you're paying healthcare for the children, most likely they will give you credit for that. Okay. If you're paying child support for another child, court ordered, if you're paying court ordered child support for another child, courts can look at that. Oh. There are actually a number of what we call deviations from the amount. Remember I told you the magic computer makes this a number. Well, there are a number of deviations that can make that amount change. Once again, child support services may or may not give you credit for those, but our job, and we will try to see if there's any way you qualify for any kind of credit. Okay. Let's say, for instance, another big credit that we often give is a parenting time. If you're parenting most of the time, or equal time, you may be able to get a reduction in your child support amount. If you're traveling far, let's say you live in Gwinnett, but your child is in Cordell, Georgia, and you're traveling twice a month, you may get a travel deviation. So those are the kind of things the courts will look at, things that are directly related to you and the child, your parenting of the child. What you eat and what you pay and who you owe, salary made, they're not worried about that.
Okay.
The one caveat to that is there is something called a low income deviation. So if you're so swamped with bills that literally you're taking home nothing at the end of the day, I mean, literally, you're not even living paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
The courts can consider deviating from the presumptive amount and giving you some kind of credit for your low income. And that's where those extreme bills come into play and those kind of things. But in general, just because you have a lot of bills is not going to get you out of paying an amount of child support. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because if that were the case, you have a lot of these dads or moms going out and getting a Benz and getting a penthouse and, Buckhead and say, I can't pay it because I have this car note and I have this house note and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
I'm always thinking. So yeah, you may see people that just create bills for the purpose of not having to pay her or pay him any kind of money. And so, believe it or not, child support can be one of those situations where it gets pretty sticky fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they look at. They look in the needs of the child. Whenever we're talking about children, and we're going to talk about this next month with Attorney Ferry for custody, they're looking at the best interest of the child. So let's talk about deviations again.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a mom that says, you know what, just give me $100 a month, but you're Michael Jordan, the judge is going to say, no, sir, you're not going to pay her $100 a month because that's not in the best interest of the child. Even if a mom doesn't want the money, you make this amount of income, your child support could change this child's life. We're not going to let the mom or dad say, don't give me any kind of child support.
Okay, wow.
The courts are very, and they look into that a lot. A lot of times we see that with some of the lower income people that we deal with. They may say, well, you know what? He said he's going to give me this and that here and there. And we try to work with them as much as we can, because you can't agree to certain things, okay? But if it's extremely different, you say, I don't want to pay any child support. Most courts, I won't say most, many judges will say, why? You need to tell me why. Is this in the best interest of the child? Is he taking care of the child after school? Is she seeing the child every day? What is the reason that you're writing off this whole thing? Because I want to make sure the child is not being negatively affected by your bad decision.
So that's that understanding that they're looking out for the child's benefit.
It makes a big difference.
And how that rolls into everything else is really
exactly.
Even if you agree not to, then it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And I will say you can agree to a lower amount. We do it all the time in mediations. Plug for mediation. We do it all the time in mediations. You may have people that say, I know the worksheet says he needs to pay me $1,000 a month, but he's a great dad. He picks up the children every day. And really, as long as he pays daycare, which is only $400 a month, I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. Well, then we still have to explain why that huge deviation is in the best interest of the child. But as long as we can explain it, you'll be okay.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was it for the specific questions that I had and that were submitted. But is there anything else you want to talk about in regards to issues that you see people come in, or any other?
Well, I think we covered the biggest parts of it. The modification is to me where we see a lot. I guess we didn't cover what happens if you don't pay it.
Okay.
And so that's why a lot of people come to me.
Okay.
So a lot of times people come to me with modifications because they, like I said, the example earlier, they lost their job, but they had to pay this exorbitant amount of child support, and now they've racked up. I mean, I'm not making this up. A guy had racked up $60,000 worth of arrears. And because it was obviously several years, but several years of not paying and just hiding his head in the sand. Well, a judge called him to the carpet, and he had to explain why he had not paid child support, or he was looking at jail time. So if you don't pay your child support payments, you can go to jail. Your license can be suspended. And so there are any number of things. Your wages can be garnished. Mm-hmm. So there are any number of ramifications for not paying your child support. And most of the time what I'm seeing, sometimes you have those deadbeat dads, deadbeat moms. But most of the time what I'm seeing is people just can't pay it. Something happened along the way where they thought that they were able to do this or they were able to do that. Or I have a guy that missed court. The mother went through child support services. He missed court. So the amount was put in based on the numbers that she made up. So now we have to jump through all these hoops to get this child support amount modified because she's saying he's making $80,000 when he's making $40,000. So I would just say be very proactive. I guess I say that story to say be very proactive when it comes to the big green elephant in the room.
Right.
Don't pretend like it's not there. I've had most parents say that once child support was in place, it made things a lot easier because now we're not thinking about it.
Right.
The money's coming in, and then the dad saying she needs more. She needs to get a modification because I know I'm paying a good amount. You know, the mom is saying most of the time, parents are saying we're doing well now. All we talk about is the raising of a child. We're not talking about the finances. We're not talking about, oh, I need to pay this rent or I got to do this, I got to do that. So I think that don't avoid the big elephant in the room. Go to child support services or preferably call CLN and we will help you with all your child support needs. If you are worried about whether or not you qualify for a modification or if you should get a modification, then come see us. Another thing I didn't mention, fathers who are non-custodial parents don't have to wait for the mother to put them on child support.
Okay.
So if you are not the custodial parent, but you have already legitimated the child, usually if you legitimate it, there is some kind of child support action. But let's just say, for argument's sake, let's say not legitimated, but you are actively involved and you do have the paternity test results and you want to put yourself on papers, as they say. Fathers can do that and go forward and not have to wait for the bomb to drop when you're not expecting it. And I've seen a lot of my clients feel comfortable saying, I've done that and I feel a lot better because now I know that I'm covered. I know that I'm being a good dad. Now, whatever she does with the money, that's on her. But every month she gets that child support out of my check or I send her the check or there's so many ways to pay child support. But she's getting it and they feel a lot better about that.
That's really good. Okay, those are some great points actually. That's a lot of takeaways.
It is.
So with that being said, if someone they've been listening and they've got some questions or they need some help or now they realize I don't need to hide my head in the sand, we need to get some things taken care of, how can they best reach you?
Right. Well, you can always call us at 770-692-8481. You can also send us an email to Candace, CANDACE at hillduvernay.com. I think it'll be on the screen. And then you can also go to our website, www.hillduvernay.com. There you can get a plethora of information about our firm, what we're doing. You can sign up for our newsletter and get tips about different things, and you can get alerts about our next webcast. You can also send me a message and say, hey, I saw your webcast, I need you, So there are plenty of ways to get in touch with us. We would love to be a help to you all. And once again, thank you, Nicole from Creative Flame. You are always great.
Thank you. All right, and we will see y'all next month.
Bye, y'all.